Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins, recording in a different environment. I am in the beautiful state of Washington, and more particularly in the beautiful city of Seattle, in a hotel room by myself. It's been a while since I've stayed in a hotel room completely by myself. I don't know, it's weird because typically at home, I am a father, so I take care of a son. I also take care of my wife. I take care of myself. I have all these responsibilities. And when I travel and I just have to take care of myself, I feel weird. I feel like I have to be checking something or I should be doing something. There's always something to take care of. And so I feel weird when I don't have that responsibility. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. You are here to listen to a conversation between two people. And that is what I'm here to bring you. The guest this week is Walter Delgado from the band Rotting Out, a amazing hardcore band from here in Southern California. Punk, hardcore, whatever label you want to put on it, aggressive. So he's the lead vocalist, and we have an amazing chat. I'll tell you more on that in a minute. Let's get some pleasantries out of the way, and then we will be able to talk about the interview, and then we'll dive right into it. So visit propertyofzach.com, visit 100wordspodcast.com, and hop on the right side of the page. There is a box in which you can type your email address, and every Monday I will email you information about the show, the week's upcoming guest. I just have a lot of stuff that I'm able to expand on in written form that you will be able to consume. And plus I recommend stuff there as far as like movies and music and other cool stuff you should pay attention to. So please do that. There's a lot of people that are subscribing to it, and I'd love to have the dialogue that way. What I've also noticed recently, so many international people are checking in, and I mean, I don't know how it's spreading over the world, but I do know it's on the internet, obviously. I find it so interesting that people in other countries seem to be really, really dedicated to listening to the show, writing in. And I mean, I don't know why. Like, are Americans lazy? Are we lazy as a culture to, not email or speak to the people who, I'm pretty easy to contact. Like, if you email me, I'm more likely than not will email you back. There are very rare occasions where I just simply ignore an email because even though the show is popular and I'm very busy, I really do love to have that direct communication. So I think it has to do with some sort of cultural perspective. I really do think that it's a matter of we as Americans tend to not just like casually reach out. This is just pure conjecture. But anyways, so thank you to those of the international folk who are corresponding on a regular basis. So thank you very much. Got to throw some shout outs to the beautiful people who are reviewing the show. There's a lot of new folks who are chiming in. One of them is cool. Front Porch Step. He is a musician that I interviewed, and he was kind enough to drop in and leave a review. So he said, I was just interviewed by him, and it was an incredible experience. So thank you very much to Front Porch Step. And then Matthew T. from the Los Angeles area, he really asks questions, even if they are uncomfortable. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm going to let you in a little bit on my thought process when I'm interviewing people. I carry obviously my own personal experience into the conversation. I try to interject here and there and obviously steer the conversation. But I find it interesting because a lot of the times I try to avoid the obvious question. So, say a band or a person is known for this one particular either record or moment where it was like, oh, this huge controversy happened or whatever. I tend to try to look at that and be like, you know what? That's covered. Let's see if we can kind of dig into different areas. On the flip side, I'm also concerned that the people who really respect this artist's work will feel like I'm doing a disservice by not mentioning that sort of either critical moment or controversy or whatever, that I'm just kind of, disrespecting that. I tend to go with the former than the latter, where what I'm really trying to create is a unique experience. What I've been noticing as I grow older in my life, things that I do have to be very deliberate in regards to either, going to a show or spending time, away from my family. It's not as like, oh, I'm 16 years old, I've got plenty of time. I really am calculated about what I do. The time that I spend on this microphone with other people, I really try to make that a unique experience where no matter what, this conversation you'll never hear again. I mean, of course you'll hear again because obviously I am recording it and putting it out on the internet, but that moment you won't hear again. It's special, it's unique, it's talking about things that this person may not ever talk about anymore. So I really try to get that sort of, lightning in a bottle in a way. And then obviously if other people mine my show or that particular conversation for further interviews, that's awesome. That's fine. That's part of the cultural landscape now. So, yeah, it's on the forefront of my mind recently because, whatever, we're 130 some odd shows into this. It's valuable to people, and I really appreciate that it's valuable. And I take this podcast pretty seriously. And I feel that it needs to be, there's a responsibility that lays on me. And it's not just like, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to sit here dicking around with a person for like an hour. You can get that on probably 70% of the podcasts that exists out in the world. And that's fine. And they do a good job at dicking around. And I don't mean that in a pejorative or a derogatory sense of the word, because obviously that is where podcasting kind of was born from, just kind of BSing on microphone. These are a lot of these thoughts that go through my head when I am approaching people to speak to and have these conversations with. So, like I said, just a little my inner workings, so to speak. Enough of that verbal potential diarrhea for those of you that don't even care about this introduction part of the show. Walter Delgado, like I said, he's the vocalist for Rotting Out. And I've known him for a very long time. Honestly, not that well, just kind of in passing, was a dude I see at shows. But I don't know, I felt like there was this sort of mutual respect for one another where it's like I saw him and doing his good work with, obviously Rotting Out. But then prior to that, he was, working at a local venue here in Southern California called Chain Reaction. And I don't know, he just always seemed like a genuine dude. That was just a feeling I got. And he always paid me, he was always very nice to me, always paid me, the respect that I felt like I deserved as another human being and, said hello and that sort of stuff. And you'd be surprised. Like when I say that, I realize that sounds like really simple and basic, but sometimes it's weird, like especially at shows in concerts, when you see certain people time and time again, sometimes you don't say hi. Sometimes you just kind of blend into this like, oh, he didn't say hi, so I'm not going to say hi, or vice versa. And so, but yeah, Walter was never that sort of person. So, and I know Rotting Out, like they do interviews, but Walter is a very outspoken person and he shares his views on a lot of things, across a lot of different platforms, like his social media and interviews and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like his life story was really, kind of preserved in amber in this form. So I reached out to him. We were texting. It was honestly over a good 6-7 month period where we were trying to connect, and he wasn't available and I wasn't available, but I was finally able to head over to his apartment in San Pedro, and we were able to hang out and have a really, really deep conversation because I'll be honest, he had a terrible upbringing. Music, the cliche of music saved my life. I truly believe after hearing his story, it did. It led him in a direction that was very positive and ultimately left a very great impact on his life to steer him away from the potential pitfalls that can happen to a child who really is growing up in a very unstable and abusive environment. Strap in. It gets, like I said, it gets very deep. It gets dark, but not to the point of where you're going to be like, I can't handle this. This is too uncomfortable. And if it's too uncomfortable for you, I'm sorry. You're listening to the wrong podcast. But anyways, this is my conversation with Walter Delgado. I'm really proud of this one. Sit back, relax, enjoy. And I'll talk to you afterwards. That's actually, I always start these things off with just my own personal sort of like entry point to getting to know you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you were always the dude that, you did security at Chain Reaction. That was like how I knew you. I don't think we ever were actually formally introduced. We just existed in the same rooms together for years and years.
I mean, that's kind of how everything is, though.
Once you transferred from being like the dude who I would see at like every show, not only the shows that you were working at Chain Reaction, but then the shows we would just both be at. Yeah. But then once you joined Rotting Out, I was like, it didn't occur to me that you had that, like, I want to play in a band.
Oh.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where it was like,
I feel like you go to that many shows, you kind of like,
I know.
You always want to be in a band.
Is Rotting Out your first band?
No.
Okay.
I used to play in a band called Looking Up.
Okay.
And actually before that, I used to play in a band called Head High.
Okay. Both of those names sound familiar. Like, yeah, I've seen those on flyers.
Head High was a couple of dudes from Miracle Mile.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like James from the Miracle Mile saying.
Yep,
it was kind of like a Stay Gold meets, not Turning Point, Saves the Day.
Oh, okay.
Type thing. And then they got 2 Saves the Day-ish, and I was just like, I'm a bail.
Yeah, you're like, not for me. Yeah. Were you singing?
No, I played guitar.
That's what I thought. Because that's your first instrument, right?
Yeah. And then I did guitar for Looking Up, which kind of had a Turning Point vibe, kind of.
Sure.
with like side-by-side vocals,
Oh,
which was
okay.
kind of cool.
That is cool.
Very short-lived because the dudes didn't really want to. They try to rush things. I don't like rushing things.
Right.
It's like, oh, we wrote a record. Okay, let's write another one. Like,
Right.
It's just like,
You're like, well, can we do this one for a while?
yeah. It's like, oh, we just wrote. We got. It's very unstable.
Yeah.
Carlos started Dogpile.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I remember that. Mike did that. He quit, and then we wrote a new demo with a couple of Dogpile songs writing out, and I was on guitar, and Carlos was on guitar, and it's literally the same lineup.
Right.
And then we asked Mike to join again, and he did.
Right.
And then he quit again.
Right.
And so I took. Well, actually, our bass player quit first, and then I jumped on bass. We got a guitarist, and then our singer quit, and I jumped on vocals, which I did not want to do.
That's something I was going to hit on later, but the first couple shows that I saw you playing with Rotting Out with, you were feeling it out. You were like, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing up here. Like,
No, absolutely not.
were you terrified?
The first show, I stood in one spot.
Okay.
I was like, actually, well, technically, the first show was Mike's last show. I
Right.
just did the Bro Him cover.
Yep.
Which is kind of like a send off to Mike.
Exactly. That was at Sound and Fury. Was it 2010 or something like that?
2010?
2009. Yeah, 2010. Yeah, that's right.
210. I think
I think it was. Yeah.
210.
2010, because that was the first year that Joey and I did it. So, and I remember that being Mike's last show, and that was a big deal. So yeah.
Yeah. That was that. And then the following year was Minority Unit's first. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, it was that. It was kind of like a send off to Mike.
Right.
And then the first show following that was in this weird warehouse in Torrance, actually. They don't do shows. And there was a blind guy doing the audio, which you'd think he'd be pretty good at.
Right.
It was, you know.
You're like, you don't have this sense. You're probably pretty good at this.
Yeah, which I don't even remember that night just because I was so nervous. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, man. And my voice is completely different.
Oh, I'm sure.
From then to now, especially even on the first song I did, Mike had recorded a song for American Hardcore, the first one,
Oh, yeah.
and we recorded it with him. They're his lyrics,
Right.
and then he bailed, and I was like, "It's kind of be weird to, submit this song." I was like, "Well, I'll just redo everything from third person."
Sure. Oh, you'll just switch the...
So
yeah.
I just switched everything to third person, so technically the song's about him.
Oh, okay.
As the song him being about
Yeah,
about himself. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna write.
Stomp on that, right?
Stomp on that. I was like, yeah, this is his, man. Like,
Yeah.
so we did that, and that was terrible. I hated my voice. I sound like a little irritating mouse. Like,
Right.
It was bad. But then we did Street Proud. That was cool.
Right. But then so when would you say that you felt kind of more comfortable as the sort of, the front man, so to speak?
Towards the end of the first tour, I was just like, well, I mean, I still get nervous every fucking time I get on stage. I get like, I get weird stomach aches and like
Yeah.
nervous shits.
I was about to say, do you got to take a show shit?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the pre-show shit.
Yeah. Huge.
And then I just like, I just kind of try. I've learned to just kind of like zone out.
Right.
Like I have to zone out, or else I'll just overthink things and get too nervous and
Right.
care too much.
Sure.
I feel like the last thing you want to do during a show is worry.
Right.
About anything.
Right.
And so it was like towards the end of the first tour, I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting the gist of this. This isn't too bad.
Right.
I was like, if I was going to sing, I wanted to kind of do it right. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but I would read like, Cro-Magnon and stuff like that, and how John Joseph
Sure.
would run and sing the words and stuff like that, like before
Yep.
recordings and stuff, or before shows, before tours.
Right.
And I would just kind of take that. Oh, cool. I'd run the beach and I'd try to sing our songs. And
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it was terrible, but
To prepare, right?
Yeah, but it would help. It actually helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And then,
It's cool to hear that you took it seriously, because like obviously the notion of a lot of people that play within the context of hardcore, like they don't necessarily take their musicianship very seriously, like, or their instrument very seriously at all.
I mean, we still don't, but
Well, whether or not you take it seriously, you at least like prepare to a certain extent.
Well, I mean, Mike kind of set the bar.
Yeah.
And so I was like, he kind of always did this like Ian MacKaye like ish type vibe.
Right,
where he'd
right.
do his like traditional like loud yelling speaking and then like his like spoken words in the middle between sets, which I thought was fucking sick. That's why he sang in the band.
Right.
Or that's why he was our original singer. 'Cause
Right.
I was like, yo, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
And then I was like, fuck, man, like I can't just go to that. I can't do that. That's not me. That's not. I was like, I was all about like Ray Cappo and fucking
Right.
HR and Rollins and just John Joseph. Like they had like this harder, more aggressive style.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's what I need to be. Like I need to like, and I would always stay on YouTube and just watch like these sick Ray Cappo like
Yeah.
like movements. I'm like, oh, that's fucking dope, man. That's fucking cool. Like he just moves around so quick. I was like,
Right.
and he's aggressive, and you can't keep your eyes off of him. I was like, I need to mimic something like that. And also like stuff John Joseph would do, where he would just like vibe. He would just vibe by the drum set,
Totally.
and like do this cool like manipulation of how he sings. You know, with, like at the end of Malfunction and like
Sure.
stuff like that. Like I'm like, oh, that's sick, dude. Like, so it's not like I have my own style, but it's like I incorporate all these other
all
ones,
the stuff, all the inputs. Yeah, yeah.
which is what bands are in general.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah,
And I was just like, oh yeah, these are stuff I admired. I was like, I'm gonna try to like mimic this and like adopt this and like just turn my own spin on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And automatically, the fact that I had lost my teeth like before
Sure.
I started singing already kind of set a presence of like kind of grit.
Oh, totally.
And it was just like, oh wow, like
Yeah, this
a
dude's
new-
serious.
Yeah, this is the new dude. Oh, watch out!
No, totally. Before we go too far down that road, so you were born and raised here in like the San Pedro area, right?
No, I was born in Mexico.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I was born in Sonora, a city called Nogales,
Okay. Oh, I know Nogales. Yeah.
which the border actually runs through.
Right.
So I was born on the southern side, you know, the south of the border.
Sure.
And when I was 3, me and my mom, she was 17 at the time, or 20. She had me when she was 17, so she was about 20.
Right.
We came over in a Coyote. Do you know what a Coyote is?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we, paid some dude, got in a truck with a bunch of other families and crossed the border.
Wow.
We in Long Beach.
Okay. I presume you remember nothing about that, or do you have like little like?
It's weird. I remember odors. Like
Interesting.
there's certain scents that will give me this crazy nostalgia of like the fields in Mexico. Because my mom worked in a field.
Okay.
You know, that's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And she would take me. I'd be a baby, and I'd just like roam the fields with her and stuff like that. So like, anytime we'd like pass through the states, I would just get certain odors or like scents from like the fields, and it would give me crazy nostalgia. I wouldn't remember anything visually,
Right.
but it was just like, oh man, like
Yeah. This puts you in a place.
yeah, I was like, this reminds me of something like very physical.
Right.
So, but
That's
then we came to Long Beach.
Sure. And then so you're primarily raised single mother. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When stepfather.
Okay.
From, so came here when I was about 5, 6. My mom got married to my stepdad.
Okay.
Had my brother, and then had my sister.
Okay. Got it.
So.
And so what was your, I mean, I presume that the, for lack of a better term, the struggle was real in regards to your mom getting over here and just kind of, making it on her own before she obviously married your stepfather.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Like when we got here, I would go with her to the sweatshop because there was no babysitter.
Right.
She would literally work at a sweatshop. I didn't know that's what it was.
Right.
When I was like 4 or 5
4,
years
yeah,
old,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And then I realized, like, oh wow, that's what that was. Like
Right.
people joke about that, and I was like, oh, that's,
I was there.
Yeah,
I was
like-
in the childcare in the corner. Right?
Yeah, well, nah,
I know childcare.
yeah, no child care. Just
No.
everybody else was my
Just
mom.
don't
at the
kill
time.
yourself. Right.
Yeah, but essentially, and the riots happened and all that good stuff, and then we just went over to the bridge to San Pedro, and I've been there most of my life.
Okay.
I mean, there's periods of time where we'd leave. I'd move for like a few months, come back.
Sure.
But I always ended up right back here.
Right back here in San
Yeah.
Pedro. And so once your stepfather came into the picture, how was he a solidifying presence? Like, was there less chaos because there was more people to kind of lend a hand raising kids, or was it still pretty chaotic coming up?
At the beginning, my parents got married. I somehow ended up with his mother at her house for a few years, like like a part of first grade and a handful of second grade.
Mm-hmm.
I lived with her, and it was cool because she was super nice. They're very religious. They were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh wow,
still are.
that's
And
a unique experience.
yeah, it was definitely different going from like
I
living
presume
with
Catholicism
or
or
actually
just
not
Christianity.
Even that. They're Christians. That's
Okay.
that's everything's based off. They're
Right,
Christian.
right.
So Jehovah's Witnesses are essentially Christians.
Yep. Just a denomination of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we came to America, we lived with my mom's brother,
Okay.
my uncle, and his wife, and their 4 kids.
Right.
Not his wife, but his girlfriend. You know. What
Sure,
I mean?
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
You know how-
Significant other.
Yes. 4 kids deep. You might as well.
Yeah, you might.
Yeah.
You've already committed that much.
Yeah. You set the standard.
Right.
And she was from Georgia. She's a southern lady.
Sure.
So, there's her English, like a southern twang.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned English. I grew up with all them. We would watch Nickelodeon, and I picked up English super fast.
Sure.
And so, by the time I was 6, I was bilingual. And then going from, having Christmases and Easters and, Southern people are very fanatic about holidays.
Yep.
Going from a Thanksgiving with a big banquet,
Yeah.
and Christmas, going to the parks and like taking pictures with the family and stuff like that, to none of that.
Wow.
To I can't watch Ninja Turtles because it's too violent.
Right.
I would sneak into the kitchen on a black and white TV at 6 a.m. to watch Power Rangers.
Sure. You're like, I'm doing something really bad right here.
Yeah, this is terrible. Like, I can go to hell. Like,
right,
that's what this is. And then, that happened, and then I would move with my mom and my dad around 3rd grade. Things got really violent early on with, like, my stepdad.
Really?
Like, he was an on and off alcoholic.
Okay.
Eventually, throughout the years, going to harder drugs, heroin, meth.
Oh, brutal.
Coke,
stuff on the streets. Sure.
He was a truck driver.
Oh, dude.
So, he gets introduced to a lot of bad shit, like, on the road.
Of course.
So, and that lingered with him.
Right.
On and off throughout the years. There's a lot of spousal and child abuse. Like, me and my mom would get hit here and there. And then we'd go to a shelter for a few months. She, like most women in her situation, go back to what it was. I forgive him, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And then we'd end up in another shelter.
Right.
Like, me and my brother went to like 3 shelters with my mom. Like,
yeah.
By the age of like 10.
Jeez.
I've been to 3 shelters, all around.
Right.
And things always got ugly.
Did you have a feeling of like hatred towards him?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Or did you?
Well, it was at first. It was more of like a confusion of like kind of like a betrayal.
Sure.
Like you're just a dude that like, hey, took you in.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like, hey, like, why is this happening to us? Like what did I do wrong? Like, what are we doing? Do we fuck up? Like, are we doing something bad here? Like,
sure. Yeah, because you look at yourself, or just like, well, if I'm being hit, like clearly I'm in the wrong. Like,
yeah, because that's how I was when a kid. If my mom would spank me, it's because I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
So like that was all my approaching things. Like, oh man, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't go to church enough. You know what I mean? Especially like in their
surroundings,
in their households. And then we moved to the projects when I was about 9 years old, and then we were there for a good minute.
Okay.
We were there. My little sister was born, and that was like 8 years up until the age of like 17.
Okay.
17.
Yeah, you were in it.
Yeah. So in the projects, that was a come and go game. Like he would come, he would leave, he would come, he would leave. He'd get kicked out.
Man.
13, like things got really ugly around the age of 13. Not just in the house, but like around the neighborhood.
Yeah,
it was
you started to witness a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I saw a dude get shot on my lawn. Like I literally watched somebody die on my porch.
Right.
I would go to the beach with my friends, so we'd wake up super early, and then I'd see like a girl just dead, like dropped off, like she got like raped and like cut.
Yep.
And so like you could see her insides, and like as a kid you're like, holy shit, like you'd see this in movies.
Right. You're not supposed to see it in real life.
Yeah, and then you'd see it and you're like, holy shit. And then you're trying to guess who it is, and the coroner's not there yet to cover it up, and there's one officer telling you, oh, get out of here, go away,
Right.
And you're just like, holy shit, and then you see kids from the neighborhood, like older kids dealing, and then they get chased by the cops, and this kid swallowed whatever he had.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And they were looking for it while he was in the cop car, and then he turned blue and died and suffocated and OD'd in the car. And like they're like, just like shit, like
right,
and you can't blame the cops for that one. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
it's
like, dude, you should be swallowing.
Right, that many drugs, right, to conceal them. Yeah.
And then that got ugly, and then abuse got really heavy. Like that. I was a teenager, now 13, and you think, push just comes to a swing after a while. You don't know what's going on. There was another argument in my house. Mom got hit, and I literally just got out of the shower and I was dressed, and I was trying to ignore the situation. There's always a lot of yelling at home.
Right.
And then I came in and I just broke down. Just came into the room. I broke down. I was yelling at everybody, telling them to stop, and he told me to go away. And first thing I saw, a screwdriver. Grabbed it and just started swinging. He jumped back in the bed.
Yeah.
And so I could only reach as far as I could.
Sure.
So I caught his legs a bunch of times, and my mom freaked out, and she told me to leave, and I was like, well, kind of like, why are you telling me to stop? Like,
I'm trying to protect you and the family. Right. Yeah, totally.
So and then that's confusion in there, and then you're just bitter, and you just start drinking a whole lot.
Yeah.
But all the drinking kind of started when I was 11, and then it just got worse at like around that age.
Right. Well, because I'm sure at that point you felt like you had no options whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like, what do I do now?
Right.
Just let it happen? You don't want me to do anything about it, you know?
Yeah.
I couldn't run away. Like, I had nothing.
Yeah.
I was fucking 13.
Right.
You know, so at that point, I just stopped being home.
Yeah.
I just stopped showing up at home. I would, like, stay out as late as possible.
Yeah.
Until I really had to. Till my friends were like, oh, well, I got to go home now. And I was
Right.
like, oh,
You're
okay.
like, damn it, I wish I didn't have to go home.
Yeah,
to a certain
yeah.
extent, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot. That's why I started going to a lot of punk shows and a lot of backyard shows.
Right.
And, you know, so I could stay out as late as I want, get fucked up as much as I want. You know,
Right,
just kind of
right.
like dwell into that whole atmosphere that just was counterproductive. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, this is what normal people do. This is
Right.
This is life. This is how it is in movies. This is how it is with
Yeah.
everybody that I see. You know, people drink, people get fucked up. You know, they do what
Right.
they can and forget. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then me and Carlos, I met him in high school, 9th grade. Like we all
Okay.
hung out together. So I've known him the longest out of I've known actually any of my friends right now.
Okay.
Everybody just kind of fell off. Like all the kids from the projects either died or got locked up.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then started going to punk shows, and then got into hardcore, and then got into straight edge. And then my first hardcore show was a throwdown show,
Sure.
Keith Barney era.
Yeah,
so
of
about
course.
2001.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like the end of the
Beyond Repair.
no, you don't have to be blood to be family vibe.
Spectacular record, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right before Haymaker, you know what
Of
I
course,
mean?
right.
So soon after they did that change with like Dave Peters and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
Pantera, right.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
But to me, like going to a hardcore show was kind of weird. It's like, oh wow, they don't circle pit as much.
Right. You know, from what you were used to at the backyard shows.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, oh, this is weird. But it was at the Glass House, I think.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure it was the Glass House. Over My Dead Body played. They did
sure.
a Bad Brains cover.
Sure.
And so I was like, oh, I know this. Like, I know this, you know?
Yeah.
And there was a circle pit, which was super cool. Mm-hmm. And I got hit in the face real hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, you know, shit happens.
Yeah.
And I just sat it out, and I was watching Throwdown, and I was just like, well, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah,
I found it.
Yeah, there it is.
Right.
And I talked about like being sober and like just staying level headed, and like there's no point to making things worse, you know, like with drugs and alcohol. And I was like,
Right.
yeah, like, and I didn't like claim straight edge that day or anything, you
Right,
know, like, I did, you know, kept reading, and then checked out all the bands and their thank yous, checked out all the bands on the label. Decision
Right.
was a big part of my life at that time.
It's huge.
And I remember the last time I drank a beer, I was at the beach. It was like we had a can, like a 24-pack of Budweiser.
Right.
I'm like 14.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
When I was 11, I would do runouts of Malibu out of the store, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm just like drinking beer, and I was just like halfway through my beer, like my first beer, I was just like, this isn't
it.
This doesn't do anything anymore. I'm not even happy.
Right.
Like I put it down. I asked my friend, you want the rest? He was like, yeah, sure, you know.
Sure.
And it just kind of just fell into like the lifestyle, like, and it just personally made me a better person. I mean, granted, it didn't help my schooling or anything. I'm fucking ditching school.
Yeah.
But just like being sober at that age definitely makes you more aggressive.
Sure.
You are more aware to everything, and you're definitely more angrier.
Yeah, you're definitely keyed into the. I mean, obviously, every teenager goes through the angst that you go through, and you're so much more keyed into that.
Yeah.
When you're sober,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're not, you're not dulling it with all the other substances that you can dull it with.
Yeah, and you're, you're alert all the time, and you're pissed.
Sure.
Like, and that's kind of like the payoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather be agitated and sober.
Sure.
Than drunk and like, oh, I'm over it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You learn to approach things better.
Of course.
Especially at a younger age like that.
Right. Something that I find so cool in your interviews you've done in the past, and just in general, it's like obviously how high you lift your mom in regards to like she's kind of she's not only the reason that I exist here, in front of you right now, but just the idea that she's been able to be the rock for you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, some kids just don't have either.
Yeah.
And that's like, and to me, I would like, fuck, I can't imagine that.
Right.
Like, there's no way. I need at least one.
Right.
You know?
Did you ever know your dad or anything?
No, I don't really care to. Like,
sure. But your mom let you know, like, oh, this is who he is.
This is who he is. Don't be like him. It was.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, she was 17 when she got pregnant. And like, but they lived together, and she left him because there's a lot of tendencies, not abusive, but a lot of like people he was associated with in Mexico that was just not a good vibe.
Not good.
Yeah, just
not good for children or adults for that matter.
Yeah, or just humanity. Right. Just, you know what I mean? Just
I know what you mean.
Yeah. That's a deeper chapter.
Oh, that is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I don't really care.
Sure.
Like, if I saw him and be like,
cool. Yeah. You weren't a part of my life at all.
Yeah, like, I don't hate you. I don't love you. Like, you're just...
Yeah, you're just a human.
Yeah,
right.
But he died when I was like 11.
Oh,
I never,
okay.
which doesn't matter to me. My mom was like, oh, your father died a few years ago. I was like...
Oh, well, there's that news.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But, no, having her was literally the only really anchor that I had to just not losing it completely.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, literally blood and sweat
Right.
sacrificed it all. You know, took hits for me. I did the same for her.
Totally.
You know, I fight her fights sometimes as I got older.
Right.
You know, if it comes to money, if I'm down, like she's always there to offer, you know,
right.
Even though I won't take it sometimes, you know.
Of course.
And, I mean, it's just best friend.
Right. Well, it's because I always find it honestly disappointing and disheartening when you hear about the sort of typical experience, especially within punk and hardcore, where it's just like, oh, fuck my parents, like, you know, they suck or whatever. And then it's like that mentality stretches over to when they become like adults. And it's just like, your parents are great. Like, they've done so much for you. Yeah. And it's like, it's nice to hear, like I said, a person like you be like, no, my mom's awesome. She rules. Like,
yeah, I mean, she does. Granted, like, she's not perfect.
No.
You know, the cycle of abuse kept happening, obviously, because she kept coming back to the situation.
Totally.
You know, but, you know, when you're young and in love, you do dumb things.
Of course.
And I can't hold it against her as I get older. You know, I fucking blew like 5 years in a relationship that I didn't really want to be in.
Right.
And just because you feel obligated or you feel like you should commit to people just because
that's
exist.
what people do, right?
Or because you hurt them or they said sorry. Sure. You feel like you owe them something, you know what I mean? And that's the worst thing, to try to make things fit.
Totally.
And, you know, I mean, there's definitely a line on the last record, you know, it's like, you know, fuck my parents for making me pay for their mistakes.
Sure.
You know, because there's times where I was just confused, and it, you know, was my mom's fault. And,
it is,
you know, you can't deny it.
Nope.
But it's like, hey, like, I'm one of those people that have the worst time letting go issues. Like, if somebody hurts me, I will fucking take to the grave. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Which is not good, and I know it's not good. You know what I mean? It's like it's. You're like
at the first step of like 5 steps. Like, you recognize it.
Yeah.
You're like, but I can't get to that second step of like maybe some sort of like idea of confrontation or resolution. Like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Like, you know, my mom would be like, you gotta like let go of everything that happened, like with your stepdad. It's like, yeah, I know, but fuck him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
is he still in your life?
Oh, he's in prison.
Okay.
Yeah, the last time I saw him, I was 18.
Okay.
We got in a fight a few weeks before that. And
okay.
I knocked him out, which was kind of cool at the same time,
cool.
But it's just like emotionally just fucking stressful.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then the detectives comes in. He was on a real like you ever seen the movie Spun?
Spun? No.
It's these kids are all fucked up on meth.
Oh, okay.
And they just pull all-nighters and
sure. Bender, whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
He was on a meth bender technically.
Sure.
He shaved his head, like he said all the demons were talking to him. Like, dude started hallucinating.
He was in deep. Yeah.
He was in real deep. And it was like sad.
Right.
Because he was literally slowly losing everybody that actually gave a shit about him.
Sure.
And it was, you know, it was his own fault. Like, you could only hold on to somebody till like it starts taking you down with it.
Of course.
He was just so far. Detectives showed up, like, hey, where's Joe? And we're like, we haven't seen him in like 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. At this point, he was living in a trailer home. Like he kept talking to my mom on and off, and my mom's like, you gotta go.
Yeah, get yourself right.
Yeah, go, you know, read the Bible, blah, blah, blah. He was religious his whole life, so it was like, you know, talk to God, find peace, like let go of all this stuff, go to AA, you know, like, yada yada. Like, I grew up going to AA meetings with him just because he was the dude taking care of me, you know.
Right.
You know, a few nights a week. It's like, oh, shit. Like, he's like, hey, we got to go to the meetings. Oh, all right.
I guess I'll go, right.
You know,
yeah.
And then I would hear everybody's fucking story and, like, you know, these fucking pity parties.
Yeah, and you're like, what am I doing? Yeah, I mean, basically everything you're describing to me is like every worst possible environment that a kid should obviously be in.
Yeah. Which is, you know, it's kind of like a early reality check. Like, I had to grow up at a young age. You know, I had to accept life. I was like, oh, like, fuck, this sucks. And I think that's why, like, once he got locked up, He got in a confrontation with somebody. I don't know if it was his dealer or not, but he ended up killing him.
Okay.
And so it was like, manslaughter.
Right.
I don't know. He should be coming out in a few years. Okay. And that's still weird. Like, if I really dwell into it, it really, like, fucks me up.
Oh, sure.
It's like, oh, damn.
You're like, I don't even want to think about seeing.
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
Because, like, he always treated my brother and my sister great.
Right.
I was just, that redheaded stepchild.
Of course.
Just not redheaded.
You were brought into the, right.
Yeah.
yeah. You're that black-haired stepchild. Right.
Yeah. And,
I find it so interesting that you, because, so many people obviously point to like either straight edge or punk or hardcore as obviously being that moment where they get, they find their clan, so to speak. But it's like, not only did you find like your place, but like that legitimately saved your life in certain respects.
Oh, most definitely. And like, granted, hardcore is not for everybody, punk rock's not for everybody, and you'll get the kids that came in because they either thought it was cool, which it fucking is.
Yeah, of course.
And they thought the merch was cool, or the visuals were cool, or just even the attitude.
Totally.
And like, I get it. I was here for the same reason, still am.
Yep.
And they grew out of it, which is perfectly fine. It's not for everybody. You expect everybody to stay here? No. It's like, sometimes it's just a phase in someone's life.
Right.
It's usually the older people that were the diehards that it did the most for them.
Yeah.
And that's why they're still here.
That's a good point.
And then that's why people get territorial. It's like you get these young kids, like, which is shitty. You shouldn't be jaded and like, oh, fuck the new generation or blah, 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 the golden days and yada, yada, yada. It's like, shut up, dude. Shut the fuck up.
I know exactly.
But you can't blame somebody for being territorial because this is literally, some of them, they're rock. This is all they knew and all they understood. So if some, 15-year-old kid's going to come and, kind of make a mockery of this, like, be fucking sexist towards girls by not, telling them they can't pit or they can't be straight edge or just trying to pick fights because they think that's what the attitude is about. Like, that's shitty. And of course people get territorial. I'll fucking get territorial, It's like, yo, you ruin it for the other kids, man.
Right.
You're ruining it for kids that possibly need this more than anyone right now. Like if I went to a show and somebody beat me up because of a certain band, like, fuck that. Like, I'm not coming to shows anymore.
Right,
like,
yeah. How far would you have gone? Yeah.
Exactly. And, and that's the type of shit that's, like, not breaking down the scene for people, but, like, it definitely spoils it for some kids.
It does.
And respect to the kids that get it and know that's not what it's about and stick around and kind of like, all right, the dude's going to leave eventually.
Yeah.
And it's definitely true. You and I have been in here long enough to know that it comes in waves.
Totally.
There'll be a handful of shitty kids. Either they learn or they leave.
Right.
Yeah,
they move on to the next, whatever the next phase of their life or whatever cool thing it is to be in at that particular moment, and they move on. And that's it.
Yeah.
But that obviously gets equated to hardcore so frequently is the fact that it's like, whatever, bands aren't political, bands don't have something to say. It's like, usually it's just like either about the cool merch or cool mosh or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because it's like not only your experience of being raised, but the fact that it's like, you obviously are an all Hispanic hardcore band. It's like
now we are.
I know. And there's so many elements that make your guys' voice unique. And the fact that like you actually say stuff like, you're obviously, it's like, you're anti-bullying and like all these things that it's like, they seem so inherent in hardcore, but aren't spoken about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Think about it. We're not like a hard band. Like, we're not like quote unquote beat down.
Yeah. Totally.
Which I still think is a weird fucking term.
It is.
It's just another hardcore band.
It is.
It's just like
that are heavy, right?
Yeah, a really watered down version of like Agnostic Front. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is a hardcore band, one of the best.
Yep.
And but I have that vibe, like me, the way I look, just because I lift weights and I'm very aggressive on stage. People think like we're a tough band, or some people might get that.
Of course,
like
just at a first glance, people could totally write you off.
Oh, easily.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I've seen a picture of those guys. They probably suck. They're not a melodic band. They're probably talking about beating people up. You know? But I think that's why I say those things because it's like, oh wow, this is somebody bigger than me telling me not to take shit from nobody, especially him, somebody his size. It's like if you go out swinging, you know what I mean? Like you defend yourself. You don't let people push you around. Don't let people talk you down,
Yeah.
Especially girls, they get intimidated and they get discouraged to be involved.
Of course.
A lot. And that's shitty.
Yeah.
When the best people in my life were women.
Yeah.
My whole life, everybody that was good to me and important important to my life were women that made me feel important and made me be more progressive in life.
Of course.
To get better, to improve.
Right.
Whether it was counselors from the shelters I was at, whether it was women from church.
Sure.
Whether I'm not religious at all. Actually, I'm very atheist.
Sure.
But you could pick out the snobs from the genuine.
Right.
And with my mom, women I've admired in movies or books.
Right.
Shit like that. Like these were all women.
Right.
And so the fact that I was seeing that girls would get discouraged about being straight edge or.
Right.
It's like, oh, they're only here to fuck dudes. It's like, well, the reality of it is, for every one girl that is doing something,
questionable,
sure, there's 10 other dudes in here for all the wrong reasons and trying to suck a dude's dick, in a band.
Yep.
Well, metaphorically, you know what I mean?
Totally.
It's just like dudes just try to get this machismo attitude, and it's just really irritating. I dealt with this shit my whole life. I don't really need to hear it from some fucking 18-year-old kid.
Because you obviously are outspoken and you have, espoused, pro-gay marriage, across the board, you express things that are generally approved and within the context of the hardcore scene. But again, no one really speaks about it. What's been the most pushback that people have been like, oh man, fuck Walter, what are you talking about? What have people reacted the most negatively to that you've expressed?
I definitely talk about not being bullied, or I've definitely told girls to hey, if your boyfriend or your husband or some dude, hits you or abuses you,
right?
I think it was put a bullet in his head, wait till he sleeps and put one in through his eyes. And then people are just quiet. People are very quiet.
Right.
It's like, I get caught in this moment, when it's just in my head. And
it's passion, sure.
Yeah, it's just aggressiveness. It's
sure.
Granted, I don't want you to fucking go to prison, you know what I mean, for murder,
right,
but know that sometimes you have to take it that far.
Sure.
You can't lay down and die. That's not an option. There's too many times where people have made you want to feel that way, where you just want to just kill yourself and die. I've
sure,
been there, man. And you feel like there's no hope. What's the point?
Right.
But you have to realize that you're important enough to not let other people's actions define your worth. You know what I mean? You can't just lay down and die. As much as you want to sometimes, you just got to fucking push through.
Sure.
And some people don't get it, and it's like, yo, you have to bite sometimes. That's the reality of things. You have to bite.
Right.
In this world, you can't. If you want to be, it's similar to protesters. If you want to be passive, only a passive war is good if both sides,
sure,
are on the same page.
Right.
And sometimes that's not. Sometimes you got to get a little bit crazy, a little bit.
You got to push back.
Yeah, you have to.
Sure.
It's life and death sometimes.
Right.
And some people get caught off that way. And even with I've called people out of the room would get quiet. They'd probably wait for me to say something because I rant my ass off.
Right.
And I would just say, how many people in here are gay? Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Right.
Don't ever be afraid to hesitate. Don't hesitate. What is it? Rollins said that, if I was gay, there wouldn't be a closet. There wouldn't be, I'd burn the house down.
Right.
Yeah. And that speaks volume because my whole life I was in the projects, especially people were very racist, very sexist.
Totally.
Very oppressive to their own kind. The Mexicans would be, I fucking hate these niggers and yada, yada, yada. And you think that's okay. You think to talk that way and to act that way is perfectly normal. That dude's a fucking faggot. Don't hang out with him. And you think, okay,
that's
this is
okay.
This is normal. My dad says this. This is fine. This is just how things are.
Right.
And as you get older, you realize if you don't educate yourself, you realize this is nothing. This is petty.
Right.
It's why is somebody's love life or their issues have any effect on mine?
Sure.
Fuck who you want to fuck, man. Just don't fuck my girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just don't hurt anybody on the way there.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's not being open minded. It's being rational.
Sure.
It's
so interesting too because to hear you speak about this stuff, it's I see you're a product of your environment, but then you are also the antithesis. You go against everything that like you said, all those values that existed within, not only your household, but the surrounding communities. You were just I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be a burnout druggie. I'm not going to, refer to people as faggots. I'm not going to do these things. And it's it's because you were exposed to that you were just wait, something's wrong there.
There's something totally wrong. Like, people,
Yeah.
I think it all had to do with religion originally. And I had questions. Well, how come this happened to us? What did we do wrong?
Okay.
You know, and pray to God and blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, but prayers aren't getting answered.
Right.
It's been 12 years.
Sure.
Still nothing, man.
Right.
You know, and then I started asking questions. Well, how come God kills more people in the Bible than Satan? How come he killed all those women and children? What did they do? You know, I was a kid and I wanted to know, well, how come everybody in the Great Flood that were kids died?
Right.
Only a family of 8 survived.
Sure.
Like, that's kind of selfish. They didn't really have an option, you know? Like,
right.
And, you know, the reverend would be like, oh, well, you know, God has a plan for everything. It's like, I don't want to be a part of that plan, man. That sounds fucking shitty.
Right.
Like, you know, what if I'm not in those selected 8? I'm fucked.
Right.
You know? Like,
yeah.
And then, you know, I started dwelling into, like, more religious topics, like, that would go against, it's like, oh, well, you know, homosexuality is wrong. It's like, where does it say that?
Right.
You're fat as fuck, and gluttony is a deadly sin.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're here pointing at somebody that is minding their own business, one,
right,
living life how they want to be, being themselves, and there's no reference to that in the Bible at all.
Sure.
Like, I don't get it.
Right.
And then, you know, at that point, I was just like, you know, I was really over it. I was like,
sure. You're like, I'm not getting the answers for what I define are meaningful in my life here.
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing here that is going to nourish me. Everything is just criticism.
Sure.
So, you know, like, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's a God. I don't believe in religion. Sure. I believe that genetically we can be good people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and also I also believe that we deserve to die.
Sure.
Like, as a
as a race.
As a human race, we're fucking it up for everybody.
Yeah,
we're one species out of how many? You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, oh, well, we have the brain. It's like, yeah, we're also destroying our own kind. Like,
yeah. We're doing a lot of things that are terrible.
Yeah.
Rotting Out as a band, to me, like, makes sense, and not even from a business perspective, but just you're like, okay, this fits with like what we like as people, like who we are as a band collectively, more so than most bands do. Like, you know, most bands will whatever, like touring with a band like Story So Far, where it's like, these are hardcore kids. Like, anybody that pays remote attention knows that. But, you know, some bands may they'd be like, oh, I don't know if we should tour with those guys. Like, that might lose its cool points or whatever, you know, whatever mythical thing. But you guys always seem to, like I say, follow kind of your gut more so than other bands, regardless of the public opinion, like regardless of the way that people feel about you.
Yeah, we've gotten put in situations where we've gotten called perverts, you know, assholes, bullies. Like, we've had it all, man. You know, we played a Rainfest and people said we sexually assaulted some girl.
Sure.
In front of like 50 or 60 people.
Right.
And then pictures showed up and you just see me and Benji sitting down on a bench, and there's a bunch of other people around us. And we're not even involved. We're just sitting there.
Right.
It's like, okay, like we don't need to like prove anything to anybody.
Right.
You know, it's if you're gonna worry about public opinion, you're just a fucking dumbass.
Right. You're like, we're gonna do what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's literally it. We're gonna do what we're gonna do. Like, they're like, oh, you want to do this tour with Story So Far? I was like, okay, cool. Like, well, what's the offer? You know, from the business aspect, it's like,
sure,
it's $100. I was like, fuck, dude.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's really rough. I don't. What's the routing? So you expect us to get from here to there in $100?
Right.
It's like, all right. Well, like, it's like, dude, but like merch and this. I was like, I don't really care about that. Like,
right.
I was like, what kind of venues? He's like, oh, well, they have barriers and blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ew, like fucking gross. Like,
right.
And so if it wasn't for Expire to be like, yo, you guys should do it. There'll be a lot of new kids, and that's literally all it was.
Yeah,
there'll be new kids that have never heard of you, and I was like, yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
that's perfect. Like, if it wasn't for Korn taking out Sick of It All in the '90s, you think Sick of It All would have been as great or as, you know, as a bridge to hardcore as other bands? If it wasn't for Terror doing it with a lot of metal bands, you know, do you think a lot of those kids would be involved with hardcore? Or they would be as cool as they are now? You know?
You want to be a gateway band.
I think that's perfect. I don't want kids to fall in love with my band and worship my band. I want kids to listen to Rotting Out and be like, oh, what other bands sound like them? And then be
Yeah.
like, holy shit, this Take Offense record changed my life.
There's a whole world out here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
want that. I'll be the bridge to your favorite band.
Right.
I think that's cooler.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
You're like, that's my point for rotting out more
Yeah.
so. Just because you guys obviously are, I mean, white suburban male makes up 80 to 85% of hardcore. Like, that's just, you know, maybe I'd skew the percentage down maybe a little bit, but I mean, Hispanic people, blacks, like most minorities are, you know, it's a microcosm of the world, you know, where it's like, so, you know, have you personally experienced like, or witnessed like racism towards you guys in particular, as far as like,
no, not necessarily. I mean, granted, there's like gas stations in the Midwest,
right.
you know, where we definitely get looked at, and it's hard to steal from the
Right.
gas station.
Right.
Which, yeah, like, it's kind of our bad for falling into their stereotype.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's these brown kids, like, keep an eye on them. It's like, we're like, fuck, I can't pocket this Snickers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, that's life on the road.
Of course.
At shows, I don't ever think we've run across that. I think just because of the way we look or what people have heard, you know, they're like, either choose not to speak up and will later say some shit online.
Oh, sure.
Or they'd just be like, I don't know, dude, I've seen this singer hit some guy, like,
Right.
rotting out, beat some drunk up in Boston. And
Right. Does your reputation precede you? Like,
I don't know, man. I don't really
I mean,
care.
I know you don't care, but I mean, like, have you run into that on more than one occasion where people are like, oh, Walter's a fucking tough ass, and then like they talk to you and they're like, oh, you're just a normal dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's happened. That definitely happened a few
Right.
times. Like, oh, like, I was scared to like come up to you because I heard this and that.
Right.
He was like, but you're super down to earth and you're super chill. I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be?
Right.
You know, like,
And you're like, and you. I mean, just in knowing you and talking to you, it's like you're way more in touch with your feelings and your emotional knowledge than most other people that would be defined as tough guy. Like, you know, the conception is that like tough guys are just like, well, fuck, like I don't emotions, like I don't feel those. Like,
Yeah.
Whereas you're like, it's all over the place, man.
Yeah, man, hey, this is life, man. That's just more stress on you, man.
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way.
Right.
It was a counselor in a child counselor in one of the shelters I lived in.
Okay.
They're like, hey, you need to talk about it. You gotta. I'm like, no, fuck you. You know, I don't need to tell you anything.
Right.
You know, who are you? Why are you trying to get me to talk? You don't know my life. You know.
Right.
And then he's like, the weight will come off. And if it wasn't for, honestly, it all started when we wrote Street Prowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, fuck.
You
like,
felt suppressed before. I mean, like,
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
It was like, why do I need to talk about this? Like that song "Iron Shot Angel" was written about 7 times before I actually decided to do it. You know, and I was like, fuck, man. Like all my favorite songs were songs where people opened up. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm good friends with all the dudes in Have Heart, and like they would take me on tour with them. I would roadie for them.
Yep.
And some of the stuff like Pat would say was pretty deep. She's like, oh, I talk about my dad and like my sister and, you know, my brother and like how they get into shit and like, you know, like the darker parts.
Right.
And I was like, and those were some of my favorite songs. And I was like, fuck, like it's always the songs that really expose themselves that people will latch onto the most, I realized. And I was like, well, it's not that I want kids to latch onto my words. It's just something I need to get fucking out of me.
Sure.
It's like, I know it'll be better for me.
Right.
Whether it helps some kid on the way, that's fucking cool or not, you know?
Right. That's a byproduct. If you find yourself, you can put yourself in a more like emotionally raw state, that will hopefully resonate with other people.
Yeah, and I've always loved talking about the elephant in the room. You know, I loved being in people's faces and talking about it. It's like, hey, like
You're like, that's uncomfortable. Let's talk about that.
yeah, this is life. Like,
Yeah.
and this is, if you keep hiding from it, it's just going to get worse. It's going to get heavier.
Right.
And it's going to slow you down. And before you know, it's going to break you.
Right.
It's like you need to embrace the reality. Reality is nourishment. And if you run from it, it's just going to get darker.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I told myself. I was like, fuck, you got to get it out of you. Friends would say, yo, just put it out there.
Right.
And I was like, and that's what I did. And ever since then, I was like, I've been a lot less scared to talk about it. Like
It does. It's funny because like I didn't even like realize that in my own head, but it's like watching you develop just, you know, as an outsider, you now seem at a point where it's like, you're confident. You obviously like seem comfortable in your own skin, and in turn, you're able to express feelings more readily.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd write a love song, and I wrote one. You know what I mean? Like, Like,
Sure.
I was like, oh, that should have been done, dude. You know, fucking everybody did it.
Been there, done. Yeah.
Yeah, like why would I do that? And then you get caught in a situation, especially after being in another relationship prior to that just nearly like aggravated me, you know, for fucking 5 years.
That was the 5-year one.
Yeah, and I was just like, ugh, like why would I do that to myself again?
Yeah.
You know? And then it's cool to expose yourself to sometimes like some of the best feelings you're gonna do, you have to be vulnerable.
Totally.
You know, otherwise you're just shut in.
Right, you're
and you
closed
won't
off.
and you won't experience you're literally just waiting to die.
Yeah.
You know, you're not
true.
living. You're just there.
Yeah.
And
You're an observer rather than a participant.
oh yeah,
Totally.
100%. And fuck it, like some of my favorite moments is when I dove in.
Yep.
Just head first, fuck it, let's go.
Right.
You know, and you know, I fell in love again. I thought it was cool, and it was like I never thought I'd find anybody as important again. You know, like to become that close, to become more vital than myself to my own being. You know,
Yeah.
And it's cool, and people are like, oh, love is for fucking saps. Oh, well,
Right.
you're young. You know, it's like, dude, I'm fucking 28 now.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. You're especially in the context of punk and hardcore, you're old. Like you're you're on your way out.
yeah. I mean, I forget how old I am, dude.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it preserves you so well. And then, you know, I write about everything.
Right.
Like you think you've been written on after 2 LPs, and like I still have shit to say. You know, which still kind of blows my mind.
Right.
But now I have like not just like a more experienced view on things.
Well, you probably have perspective too.
Yeah, a new perspective on like
Right.
my own band,
Yeah.
punk music,
Totally.
being a kid. Like I'm still a fucking child.
Of course.
Like it's fucked up. It's because I grew up so fast that I know I tend to latch onto everything that keeps me young.
Yeah.
And I don't see why you wouldn't.
No.
Why would you want to grow up? It's the fucking worst thing ever.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah,
You can do. I always put it this way: you can do adult-like things, but you don't have to grow up. Like you don't have to grow up from a mentality standpoint.
Yeah, like
As long as you're responsible,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing.
yeah. Oh, you mean get a job and pay rent and like
Yeah.
eat food? And like yeah, that's fine. Like
Yeah,
I've been
do
doing
that.
I've been doing that shit since I was 16.
Right.
You know, like, but why would I want to grow up?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to be as immature as possible, as old as I can, you know,
Right.
as long as I can.
Right.
I want to be 60 and making fart jokes, you know?
Yeah, of course. That should hopefully never die. Right.
Yeah,
right,
hopefully.
Right.
And I don't want to be around you if you don't like fart jokes. You're a
Yeah,
dumbass.
get out of here.
Yeah.
There's 2 last things I want to hit on before I let you go. One was the idea of Rotting Out is in this like super interesting position where you guys are, I mean, obviously very well developed in the hardcore scene and you're well respected.
It's still weird.
Yeah, but I mean, but you are. It's like because you've worked your ass off, you've done everything, you know, the quote unquote right way. And so now that obviously other bands outside the context of the hardcore world like want to tour with you, you're this interesting band that you can sell tickets in most portions of the country. Bands that see that want to tour with a cool band, like, you know, they have that like, Rotting Out's awesome. Do you find yourself having to kind of protect the band in some capacity from like inauthentic people trying to kind of come in and capitalize on Rotting Out in a way, like whether it's like a business sense or whether it's like other bands that want to take you out on tour that you're just like, that's weird, that doesn't make sense?
Oh, no, most definitely. We've
Okay.
turned down a lot of offers where we're just like, no, that's dumb. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
I don't like that band. I don't know those people. And
Right.
I've heard things from friends that have toured with them that, you know, is just irritating. It's like, no, I don't want to. And I honestly, and we're just like, fuck, man, I wish we didn't do that.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, I obviously don't want to like name
No,
names,
no,
but
no,
it's
you
just like
So you've turned down
people try to ride whatever they think we are
right?
and use it, be like, oh, hey, look, we know.
Yeah,
Rotting
we're
Out.
cool. Right.
Yeah, at which I do. We're a bunch of dumbasses, dude.
Right.
We barely know. We play power chords.
Right.
I don't know. I don't. You tell me to play a C chord. I just fucking look at you.
Right.
Like, oh, you mean drops? I know drop C.
Yeah.
You know, like I know Hatebreed.
Right.
Like
I can play Perseverance pretty well.
Yeah, you
right.
Unloved. Yeah, let me hold on. You know.
Totally.
Yeah, but no, we're not musicians.
Right.
We're and whatever people. Oh, they have street cred. It's like no, just because we're from a specific part of town. You know, like, do you really think like being from the ghetto is cool?
Right.
Shit fucking sucks, dude. You really think being broke and being late on rent was cool growing up? Like,
Right.
You're getting beat up.
Yeah,
by,
you're like, I can't wait to start a band 10 years later
and talk about this bullshit. Like, you know, shit fucking sucked, man.
Totally. You're like, this is not cool that I'm able to mine from these experiences for later on songs.
Yeah. I wasn't like, oh, this would be a dope song. It's like, fuck, man, this sucks. Like,
right.
I remember this. Like, sometimes I hate singing certain songs because depending on the mood or the day, it just strikes harder than it usually does, like on every other night. And I'm just like, fuck, man, that sucked.
Right.
And then the kids will be like, oh, dude, you talked about that, and I know what that's like. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you because that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's the most that I can tell you. I'm sorry because I know what it feels like,
right.
and I'm sorry you know what it feels like.
Right.
This shit sucks.
It's cool we shared that, but that sucks at the same time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And yeah, there's definitely bigger bands that are like, oh, like, let's take Rotting Out or Rotting Out. And then, you know, anything money involved, I can't stand.
Really?
Like, it's like, oh, how much do you think you guys should how much do you guys get paid for shows? It's like, dude, it still blows my mind that we get paid.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's...
yeah.
You know?
Right.
Like, when we started out, we put ourselves in so much debt.
Of course.
That we're still slightly paying off, which is almost zero, which I'm stoked on.
Right.
But, like, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like, okay, let's go on the road.
Let's do this, yeah.
Let's go on the road. Let's tour with this. Let's tour with them. Let's tour with our friends. Let's tour with these new bands.
Right.
Let's just tour. Let's do another record. Yeah, let's do another record. We'll release it. We'll play these. Well, oh, wow, somebody wants to fly us out. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, do we have the money to fly out? Yes, no. You know, like, we would kind of try to see what we can
right,
make
you balance.
happen.
Sure.
Yeah. And, you know, it was a growing process. But then there would be bands like, oh, we want them. And it's just like, dude, like, you want us for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
You don't
you don't feel like it's authentic, right?
And the cool thing about the Story So Far tour, first night of tour, we didn't know any of the dudes.
Right.
We didn't know any of the bands. We knew a couple people from, like, previous tours.
Right.
And we literally made it by the fucking hair on our balls.
Right.
And we load in, we literally had to set up by the bathrooms.
Oh, yeah.
We set up merch by the bathrooms, and we're like, oh, there's a fucking barrier.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, the stage is high. We'll figure something out.
Right.
First song, singer stage dives. Singer for Story So Far, just stage dives, sings along. I was like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, this kid's not...
You're like, we're here. Right.
This kid's not a fucking poser. Like,
totally.
Like, and then I would talk to the other members. He'd be like, yeah, I was at that show. You guys had Mike, and there was like 20 kids there.
Right.
I was like, you were at that fucking show? He's like, yeah, I was like 15. I was like, that's fucking sick.
Yeah.
I was like, that show sucked, but I was sick.
Right. That's cool. You're there. Yeah. Like, again, it proved the fact that it's just like, oh, like this, I'm glad we made this decision.
I was like, why'd you guys ask us? He's like, we like you guys.
Right. You're like, weird.
I was like,
weird how that works.
I was like, sick.
Yeah.
I was like, that's cool, you know? And...
yeah, basically you're protecting obviously the band from trying to partner up with people that are just like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's just like you can tell sometimes bands do desperate moves,
right,
to get a certain crowd in.
Sure,
it's like, oh, we want to legitimize our relationship with hardcore bands,
right,
and so let's get these bands,
of
or
course.
let's tour with this band, and that's kind of whack. It's like, no, I want to tour with Running Out because they're sick.
Right, I like
they're
them.
sick. I mean, they can be an emo band or a fucking death metal band.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll be like, yo, I want to tour with Running Out, the band's sick.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll be like, yeah, that's cool. But,
You're like, as long as you start with that, we're cool.
Yeah. As long as you actually know what we're about, then yeah, awesome.
Yeah, then we're cool. The last thing I want to hit on was the fact that you're extremely passionate about weightlifting.
Yeah.
Extremely passionate.
Yeah, especially in the past couple of years, which has taken its toll on my stage presence.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you're carrying around more weight.
60 pounds heavier now.
Is this something that you think that will obviously, that you have your eyes set on for? It's like, well, you know, Rotting Out could last for the next 5 to 10 years or whatever. Who knows? But is competitive weightlifting something you're being like, hey, this is something I can do for the future, so to speak, or is this just a fun?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, like I train people. Like, you know what? I train, and I also train others.
That's awesome.
So, like, that's something I want to do. That's
okay.
like, you know, you never know what could happen with your band where,
no.
you know, people have a falling out, break up, just
right.
a bad day, and you just call it quits, or you just over it.
Yeah.
You know, bands happen.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. They don't last forever.
But the cool thing is, you know, I can always go back to the gym and be like, all right, what needs work?
Yeah.
You know, how can I get better?
Right.
How can I get stronger?
Right.
How can I get faster? You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
How do I improve? Like, you know, there's that. You also get a mental discipline out of that. You know, like, oh, I can't go out tonight. I got to go bench. I got a meet coming up. I can't skip days. You know, I got to watch my diet. I got to take in calories. I got to eat properly. I got to sleep good.
Right.
You know, and it was cool because I was afraid my girlfriend wouldn't be into it, and it's kind of a big deal to me.
Right.
And then she dwelled into it, and she's now, for her weight class and her age, she's 7th in the nation.
It's amazing.
Which is fucking awesome, and I'm jealous of because...
Right. You're like, I'm not there.
Yeah, because I'm on tour, and I can't put in the work that needs to be done to make it there. You know, she's at home. You know, when I'm gone, she's she obviously just focuses on training and work and the dog. You know,
right?
And that's she earned where she is. You can't. There's no politics around it. There's no.
Yeah, you either do it or you don't. There's no shortcuts.
Yeah, there's either you get 2 white lights or you get reds. You know, there's your lift is good or not.
Right.
It's black and white. There's not it's good or not. It's simple as that.
Right.
And so you earn your worth.
Right.
And you earn your placement. And I think that's cool. You know what I mean? Like there's no bullshit to it. And it's just straightforward. Your hard work pays off.
Right.
And it's definitely something I'm involved. But when it comes to stage, this is hardcore. I don't know if anybody could tell, but fuck, man, I felt gassed,
sluggish.
Oh my god,
really?
Like if you look at shows from like 2 years ago and a show now,
right?
There's definitely a black and white, especially not only in the stage presence,
right,
but just in the endurance.
Oh sure.
Like I'll talk a little longer,
right,
to save some time.
Yeah, gotta save some breath, right?
You know, I'll crouch down by the drum set. I'll only talk by the drum set just because I'm like, how's everybody? You know, give it up to so and so for opening. You know,
right.
And which I know that there's a price. You know, there's a part, but all that means.
Your stage presence just needs to evolve into a different stage now. You're just like, all right, I'm carrying more weight now, so I'm not going to be doing my jump kicks like I used to. Maybe I'll
definitely. Or it just means I just got to kick it into gear this fall and just go harder. Just literally just train cardiovascular, which fucking sucks, dude.
Right. No one likes cardio.
No, fuck that, man.
Well, Walter, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This was really fun.
No worries, man. I'm always down to chat.
To chop it up.
Yeah. I'm always down.
So there you have it. There was my conversation with Walter. Yeah, like I said, just a very genuine guy. Was ready to discuss anything and everything. You know, I always do a little, before I start the interview, I kind of give people the opportunity to not approach certain issues in their life. I always say, hey, if there's something you don't want to talk about, either let me know, or if we hit it in the interview, then we'll divert. And he basically was just like, oh, you don't even need to say that. And I'm like, no, I know, but I need to have that safe word in place in case we do run across a topic that a person is not comfortable discussing. So Walter was a complete open book, and I couldn't thank him enough for that. So the producer for this show is Tom Richfield, always and forever, my bae. Isn't that how the kids say it? Bae, baby, whatever. I apologize if this is a little more rambling, but like I said, I'm alone in my hotel room. I feel like I'm like the king to my kingdom right now, and because there's no one that's going to bother me. I'm not going to have a kid being like, "Hey, I need my dinner." It's like, oh, leave me alone. All right, I'm busy. I'm recording a podcast. Visit propertyofact.com. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. And if you find this a valuable resource and a valuable thing that you do, donate to the show. I really appreciate that, and I'm continually improving the recording tactics. We'll hopefully pass that on to you, who will be like, you know what, this does sound better. It's listenable. I like that. Until next week, be safe, everybody.